Okay guys, so I got a question about the, let's see here, the Domino 500 and comparing that to the actual Mafell DDF40. So I'm going to try to make this as concise and precise as I possibly can, but I'm going to give a little bit of a backdrop first. So I initially learned about the Domino device, which is this one here, the DF500, when my wife and I were in the market for buying a dining room table. And when I looked at the prices of the furniture on IKEA's site and also in store, I felt like, I can probably build a table for cheaper. So my YouTube searches led me to the Domino. This is what came up in the algorithm. And so I ended up learning about breadboard ends and all of these things, floating tenons and all of that. We ended up actually buying a dining room table from IKEA, but I couldn't get this particular tool out of my mind because, it seemed like it would make woodworking easy. Now, I've always been a person that would try to build things when I got around to it. But this right here seemed like a, kind of like an easy button, for lack of better terms. So that is why I eventually bought the Domino, and I also bought a dust extractor when I bought the Domino. Now, the thing that I didn't know when I bought the the Domino, the 500, was that well, first and foremost, I didn't understand the system of Festool. And in that system, you have the dominoes, obviously, you have the domino connectors, and I'm going to try to narrow this down before my mind gets off track. The domino connectors, I ended up advancing to the domino connectors because I wanted to make knockdown furniture. And I wanted to be, because I realized that my skills were not super advanced and I had not purchased clamps to be able to make projects, I decided I could try to work around getting clamps by buying the domino connectors, which are very expensive in the sets and individually. So I bought the domino connectors, and what I found when I bought the domino connectors is that they cannot be reused once they're deployed. So that actually increased the price of the domino even above the actual domino, just using dominoes themselves. Dominoes aren't as cheap as dowels, but the dominoes actually are more expensive in a lot of ways by comparison to, like, if you were going to use pocket hole joinery, you don't have to spend $1,100 on a pocket hole machine. So the screws by themselves may be individually more expensive. I haven't checked the prices, but they may be more expensive than an actual individual domino. They may not be, but dominoes are more expensive than dowels. Let's just get that out of the way. So I learned that the actual connectors were not going to serve the purpose that I wanted them to serve, and that purpose was that once I understood that my skills were not as advanced or things were not as easy as I would see on TV, I realized that even though I had a high-end tool such as the domino, I still had a lot of growth to do in regards to my woodworking. And I didn't want to just throw money away buying, domino after domino, making glue up after glue up. And then obviously, as I said, if you buy the domino connectors, they cannot be reused. And since they cannot be reused, you're actually increasing your costs even further. So that is how I ended up going from the domino. I ended up purchasing the Lamelo. What the Lamelo provided me was the opportunity to use knockdown fittings and some of my learning experiences where I could actually make a project, use the knockdown fitting. I can actually retrieve the knockdown fitting and use it over and over again. I still have in the shop right now my CDX cabinet that I was building, and it's just in parts, it's just in pieces. I haven't finished it, but the knockdown fittings are in the actual wood plywood. It's just leaned up against the wall over there, and I can pick that project up whenever I want to. And if I don't want to utilize or continue with that project, I can take those Lamello fittings, which are more expensive than the actual domino, but I can take those fittings back out and use them on a future project. So that was my reasoning for buying the Lamello, was so that I would have the ability to be able to make a project to completion with a knockdown fitting, and if I wasn't happy with the end result, I could actually retrieve my fitting and use it over and over again. You can do that with both the Climax fittings and also the Tenso fittings. So That was my reason for purchasing the Lamello. Now, the actual Mafel, I ended up circling back and getting the Mafel after these other two, was because of the fact that the domino, or the dominoes for the domino are more expensive than dowels for the Mafel dual doweler. And so I felt like, okay, if I was looking at this in stages, right? Remember, I'm a novice, so I didn't have all this information prior to spending the money. But fortunately, I did have the money to where I could afford buying these tools, so it's no harm, no foul. Now, the domino didn't serve the purposes because I didn't have the clamps. And of course I could buy clamps, but even still, if I bought the clamps, you're talking about permanent glue-ups with the domino. The Lamello gives you the ability to be able to start a project, fail the project, but then also retrieve your fittings so that you basically have no cost other than the actual wood material. So that's a savings there, even though the machine obviously is more expensive. And then coming with the Mafel dual doweler, it's very comparable to the actual domino in the sense that you can actually do glue ups. However, the actual dowels are can be more readily accessible. You know, you don't have to go to Festool, you don't have to go to Woodcraft. Like, you can't find dominoes at Home Depot, but I can actually find some dowels at Home Depot. So this makes this more user-friendly. Dominoes, as I said, I'm repeating myself, are less expensive, or dowels are less expensive than dominoes. Now, what this also, once I bought this from Mafel, it may have been on Mafel's site where I actually read one of the comments where someone that was living in, I believe in California as well, had reached out to a particular company and they would provide dowels for this machine. So once I saw that, that kind of, you know, pushed me over the edge with going ahead and purchasing the Mafel, putting that money out up front. And then my thought process is not that I would not use the domino, but more so that this will be like, these two machines will be my first line of use as I'm learning my woodworking. And as I got better, then I can employ the domino, which has, you know, more expensive wood fittings than the Mafel, but also permanent fittings as opposed to the Lamello, okay? Now, I ended up contacting that company because these, the cutters for the Mafel actually come in millimeter sizes, not in like 1/4 inch or whatever. It's not imperial, it's metric. And so I was thinking that I needed to get metric dowels. When I called the company that was actually spoken about, that's in California, they offered imperial dowels, and I was thinking that I was gonna have a problem with that. So once I realized I was not able to source metric dowels consistently, like you can buy them hit or miss on Amazon, but I didn't see just like an open supplier on those. Through a little bit more research, I came to the conclusion that basically I could use imperial or metric dowels. That's one. But the other thing is, I ended up learning, I was looking into a way to be able to make my own dowels consistently. Now, I've seen people make dominoes, but it's a little bit more of a process than making dowels. At least that was my understanding up to that point. So if I was able to make my own dowels, then what I would be able to do is, after the purchase of the Mafel and after the purchase of I can't get it out right now, but basically the the Veritas dowel maker, then those two items would work in conjunction for me to be able to have the least expensive method for joinery that was not pocket holes. Now that's obviously not, you know, kind of taking into account how expensive this machine is, but more so looking at the fact that if I buy a Craig jig, I have to buy Craig screws or the equivalent indefinitely. If I buy this Mafel dual doweler and I take care of it, tools like this last, you know, can potentially last a lifetime. It's not a battery powered machine, it's a corded machine. And since I'm I guess more on the DIY. I'm not a contractor. This will not get the type of use that it would get if I was actually some kind of contractor. So thus far, this could potentially last me a lifetime. So this combined with the Veritas dowel maker, I could have the ability to make nice joints indefinitely, and my cost over time actually goes down by comparison to pocket holes, even though the initial investment of a pocket hole jig is cheaper. Now, that being said, getting back to the question, so that's a little bit of the backdrop. That explains why I have all these machines. Now, obviously, having the 700 Domino is essentially because it does larger dominoes for bigger projects. I do have, if I can work it out with the wife, it's going to take time. I mean, really, to tell you the truth, I would need like my channel to do better to kind of, you know, my wife has supported me thus far getting to this point, but I was actually intending on getting the battery powered version of this so that I could actually do a comparison, but also getting the larger Mafel so that I can do larger dowels. So then I would be completely covered when you're talking about the handheld joinery devices that are offered on the market, which make joining of wood look a little bit more professional, but also make it easy. Not necessarily novice easy. I've come to learn that these do require some degree of practice in order to master them. But again, the question was, do I find any benefit regarding the Domino DF500 versus the Mafell DDF40? And this is what I would say. Obviously, this has cheaper fittings than the Domino. And then also this particular machine, so that's the benefit there. But then I have the additional cost of having to buy the Veritas dowel maker or some kind of dowel maker to bring that cost down even further. But you have to recoup that money by purchasing the equipment, both the Veritas dowel maker and this, to actually see that reduction in cost. But that being said, dowels are cheaper. Now, the benefit to me owning both of these machines, I can speak directly to this point. This machine right here, the DF500, the plunge mechanism is a lot easier by comparison to the Mafell. The Mafell does require a little bit more strength to actually activate the tool into woods. I've so far just used it with like regular 2x lumber, like, you know, Douglas fir 2x4s and such. And I do notice a stark difference in as far as the actual power that's required to push the machine in, to actually deploy the machine into wood. These cutters are not quite as, they don't go into the wood quite as easily as the Domino cutter, which is a single cutter that actually waggles back and forth as it spins to make the cut. So that is something you have to keep in consideration when you're talking about the Mafell versus the Domino. Aside from that, I would say they're very comparable. If you're in the Festool system and you do have clamps and you're making permanent projects that you want to glue up, then this is an excellent option because Festool has this ecosystem which, you know, really brings a lot of value to their tools. By comparison, the Mafell has its own benefits, being that you do have a cheaper consumable to use. But then the other thing that I would say is a benefit in regards to the Mafell, let me jog my memory. Actually, so the benefit for the Lamello in regards to the Domino. So I guess I'm going back and forth. I have not tried the Mafell knockdown fittings, so I can't speak on those yet. I may get those in the future, but there's other things that I want to get that go with this, like the actual rail system to be able to do shelf pin holes, because I wanted to compare that with this particular, well, not with this device, but with the LR32 system from Festool. But comparing the Lamello to the Domino, the Lamello, like I said, it gives you reusable knockdown fittings. That is the main benefit for me. So, you know, most hobbyists are not, or DIYers, whatever you want to try to label me as, it doesn't matter to me, but are not going to buy all of these machines. But because I've owned all of these machines, I know the difference or the benefits between the different ones by comparing each one to the other. And if I was a person that was starting out and I was unsure about this, but I wanted a handheld joinery device, and I wanted to be able to explore, like say if I took a piece of wood and I wanted to connect two boards together, but I wasn't sure if I was going to be happy with the end product, so I wanted to be able to put it together and take it apart and put it together, then this is the machine I would go for. It has the most expensive fittings, but there again, this could be converted to be used as a regular biscuit joiner if you wanted to, and they do have thicker plastic biscuits that you can use with this device. So it's not quite a domino, it's more close to a biscuit joiner if you use that feature, but you can use that type of joinery with this type of device if you wanted to have something similar to like a domino, and you could use biscuits too, regular biscuits with this machine. It's not the same as a dowel or as a domino, but this gives you the best, I think, bang for the buck in regards to knockdown fittings. This machine right here is an excellent all-arounder. You've got knockdown fittings. Well, all three of them have knockdown fittings. I haven't tried the Mafell, and I may go ahead and pick some of those up so I can do a comparison of all the knockdown fittings. I think I did one between these two. If not, I'll do one. But the Mafell, I would say, is the one you would want to go for if you're concerned about actual consumable pricing. This one's the best for consumables. This one's the best for knockdown fittings. This one has the best support system all around. The Domino, the Festool system is in my opinion so far the better system of all of the tool brands that I've seen and that I've had the experience of working with. Not saying they have the widest variety of tools, but it's a better thought out system. Anyways, guys, this is a short video. I hope this answers the question that the person had in the comments. It's long-winded, but thanks for taking time to watch the video, and I'll see you in my next one. Take care.